You're busy, you've got a decent practice, but nobody wants to be decent. You want to be great, and you want to have a great practice. So how did the most productive, profitable dentist in the nation balance real life, work, and profits, and somehow make it all seem fun? Well, it comes down to simple, everyday practices. So grab a lunch, join us as we chat with top clinicians and influencers to discover their formula for uncommon success. Are you ready? Then it's time to explore everyday practices with Vicki McManus-Peterson and Dr. Chad Johnson.
Welcome to Everyday Practices. This is Chad Johnson and Vicki McManus-Peterson. Vicki, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Chad?
Good. So we today have Dr. Wade Kifer from Arkansas. Dr. Wade, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad.
Excellent. So we're glad to have you on the episode today. How long have you been practicing?
Since 2003. So 16 years or so?
Okay. And tell me, did you start working somewhere else, or did you open up from scratch right out of school? How did your story go?
Probably pretty typical. I came out of school and did a one-year AEGD residency at the University of Tennessee. After that, I came back to more or less my hometown, Arkansas, Fayetteville. Associated a couple different places, and after a couple of years, looked for a practice to buy and ended up where I was. So
nice.
Just a nice older gentleman, still comes in the practice 16 years later, and we have a cup of coffee every week or so, and worked out well.
Very cool. So you and I met through Productive Dentist Academy. Can you tell me how your journey went towards, was there a point of frustration that you decided to look for consulting? Had you tried other consulting before? And I'll throw you a third question. How did you run across it all together? Altogether. I'll just bombard you with 100 questions.
15 questions, Wade.
Yeah, and answer it in 2 sentences.
All right. If I get off track, bring me back in. My journey was, I always wanted to be good. I mean, my drive has never been, let's just be average. You want to be good. I don't know anyone who says I just want to be average. And so when I got out, I started exploring just continuing education and everything. And it eventually led me up to the Coyce Center. John Coyce, I consider him a friend and mentor, has taught me so much. And he taught me how to communicate to an extent and taught me a ton about dentistry. But after a few years, it was like I wasn't using everything I learned. And so you're sitting there going, okay, I have all this information, but patients aren't saying yes. My practice isn't really changing. You almost feel like a failure in a sense because you're spending this time and this money away from your practice, and where's it going? So I'd had a consultant or two, and we started out, our practice saw one patient a day at first. So they'd come in and helped us set up some insurances and taught us a recall system and stuff, but we really still weren't growing. I don't remember how I heard about PDA. It was probably Dental Town, if I was to take a guess, but that was back in 2010, I believe, that I started with journey with PDA.
Were you guys doing CIRIC as well?
No, not a bit.
Okay.
So we weren't doing anything like that. We just had a general dental practice, trying to implement some Coyce principles into our practice and going to work every day. So I'll never forget it. I went down to PDA and down the lobby of the hotel and having dinner one night by myself before. I took my whole team down there, and one of the coaches just said, "Hey, are you here for the PDA event?" And I said, "Yes." And she just approached me out of the blue and said, "Hey, why don't you come out on the back porch and let's have a talk?" And I'll never forget it because Vicki was out there, Bruce is out there. I didn't know who these people were.
Yep.
But, they took the time just to include me in their conversation, and they were just talking family and talking life. And anyway, next day I came in and, got stuck in the front row and got to hear Bruce and Vicki do their presentation and everything, and I was just blown away. And so before it was over, we had signed up for coaching, came back, and I'll never forget it. We doubled our production the very first month after. And then the next month it went up again, and we're like, holy cow, this is amazing. And we're taking great care of patients, and we're starting to implement some stuff. And then the third month it just crashed. It was the emotion wore off, and then it was the day-to-day stuff. And it was like, wow, that didn't work. So, then it was figuring out a journey, because it's not all easy and just doesn't go up all the time. And everything. So, over the next handful of years, we had to really buckle down and build a system that was built to last. So now we call it our brick wall, because if you've got a wall of cards and you take out a card, the whole wall falls down. But how do you build a brick wall that, you can take out a brick and be okay?
Wow.
You know what, Wade, you brought up such a great point. Number one, you have felt like family from day one. I can't even remember a time in my life when you weren't a part of it, that could be Alzheimer's, but it's also.
Let's hope not.
But what I think is so interesting about your journey, and that I want the listeners to really pick up on, is that you started in dentistry in the golden age, right? I remember back in 2003, I was still teaching in San Francisco at Pac Live, and aesthetic dentistry was booming, and lasers were just coming in, so technology was exciting. We also still had this little consumer finance tool called home equity lines of credit, right? And that doesn't exist anymore. So the housing market, was on the upswing. The economy was great. And then 2010, like 2008, we got nervous. 2009, it crashes. 2010, you began this journey. And I think what you just pointed out, which is so interesting, and this is what happens a lot, was when you first start working with anyone from the outside and they come and look at your business, there is this thing called pent-up demand, right? And a bit of organization and the right attitude, just good team agreements, will get you that first boost of increase in your business. And what I really admire about you most is the second stage of learning is always that disillusioned learner. You said we hit the wall, we crashed. Yeah. And Chad, you've experienced this too. And it's really that concept of failing forward, because it's those moments when you cross through adversity and if you do what you did, which was hunker down. And what I heard you say was we really got down to work to build the foundation for a great business. So what were some of the foundation pieces? So once you got past the pent-up demand in the practice and you really had to look at what's going to create sustainable growth, because you've grown $300 an hour, like every year for the past few years. Like you just keep growing. So what's at the core of it?
We pride our practice mainly on customer service. So that's why we try to push our patients, do more than they'd expect. And we have a team that's just really bought into that. Now saying that stuff, like you said, Vicki, it doesn't happen by accident. We get tons of compliments, and it's funny. The ones I love the most are from other small business owners that they say, we can tell you work on it. I mean, we have 4 to 6 hours a month that we sit down as a team and go over what's working and what's not. We read every review we ever get.
How do you find that time?
You have to make it. So, for example, we were doing about 4 or 5 hours, and we realized as a team, we're not all on the same page. Like we're kind of redoing some of our perio program. Well, it's hard to just meet with the hygienists and have the whole team on the same board. The front desk, I mean, they don't need to know how to treat perio, but they do need, or they don't have to know how to treat it.
Right.
They need to know how to. They need to know what's going on. So we realized, okay, we don't have enough time. So it may be 6 months out before we can build it, but we book that time in 6 months from now so that we can sit down as a team and make sure we're all on the same page and learn. I mean, I can promise you there's not very many teams in our area that spend as much time trying to be on the same page as we do.
Well, I'm going to put a great big gold star by that. That you get triple leadership stars in that for having the courage to work on your business, not just in your business. And it's like one of the number one mistakes I see doctors make. And here's how you know you're in trouble as a leader with your team, when you say things like, oh my God, do I have to pay them for that hour that we're training? Or what if we do it during lunch, do I have to buy lunch? It's like you get to pay them. It's your privilege to buy them lunch. This is it's so inexpensive to do this, right? For the payoff that you get, and you'll spend $100,000 on a new piece of equipment, and you won't spend 4 hours to train your team on how to use it. It's really kind of backwards, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So no, it's made the biggest difference. I would say in our practice is, I mean, that attitude and that training, and I mean, we have the other big thing I'd say we do is just the delegation. We have a guy on our front desk. He's amazing, but he's in charge of customer service. So he's not only that, he's walking around, and we talk about, like I said, delegating. If I'm doing dentistry, I can't watch everyone, and it's not get onto them. It's just, how do we coach people up to do the right thing? So each department, we kind of have someone who's in charge of the training, and then we give them that time to train and the tools they need to train.
How did you find such amazing people? I mean, you're in Arkansas, you're not in Los Angeles, How did you find such great people?
I learned a lot of this obviously from you and Bruce and the team, but I would say one thing we did is, at first we just got lucky and blessed. And at first, when you're a small business owner, you're running every hat, right? I was doing payroll. This was back before even the QuickBooks. You had to use a little paper chart to figure out how much taxes to write out and take the check to the bank,
Oh my God.
You remember those days?
I think Chad still does that.
No, I was going to say, I have to bow out of that. I never did that. I went straight to QuickBooks. But you and I had 2 whole years of difference. And I'm sure those 2 years they developed the computer and QuickBooks. But remember, audience, this is an Iowa person going to poke fun of an Arkansas person. I know I don't have a lot of wiggle room, but I'm just
Yeah.
Well, and
We've come a long way.
And I know Angela Sullivan on our team back then is fantastic at team building. So I know she helped you with all that stuff, but it really does start with finding the right people that are committed and having the agreements. And how did you really, sometimes I see there's such a difference between the doctor's education and the team's education, and particularly someone like yourself who've gone through the full COIS journey. What was that journey like, and how did you take your team on that journey with you so that they're 5-star clinicians like you are?
Well, it actually just goes back to a little bit what we said earlier. That journey it's not a cheap journey. It's not, it's very time consuming, to get to Seattle from Arkansas. It's a full day travel, and then you get up there, your time out of the practice and everything. What I think I realized is without my team, I couldn't get it implemented. And so that was kind of where our meeting started. If I was going to talk about risk factors, I understood risk factors, but I couldn't get my team on board. And so then I went to PDA, and that's kind of what drew me to PDA, is that Bruce talked the COIS language. And so that was my first big journey of saying, okay, I'm going to invest in my team, and I'm going to take my team to Dallas. And PDA is not cheap either to go down there. Well worth it. But when you're struggling business and you have to pack up your entire team for 3-4 days, travel down to Dallas, time out of the office, that was the big wow moment, because right then, though, we saw that instant return. And then we started working with, like you mentioned, Angela, and she was amazing at team building and building people up. And now we work with Chris. And you can't walk away with a conversation with Chris not feeling good about yourself. He makes everyone, builds them up. Yeah. And so we try to take that, and, that's my proudest moment probably as a clinician. Like, for example, our office manager, she's awesome. She's one of my best friends. And, from no education to running an office with 3 doctors, she does the planning, the training, the hiring, everything. And so when you find those people and empower them, it was like, at first, like I mentioned earlier, I was doing payroll. I'm doing the leadership training. I'm doing everything. You're a small business owner wearing all those hats. And then you realize, okay, I'm going to let a little bit of it go. And when you let it go, it's like, okay, it frees me up, but they still can't do it better than I can. Or at least that's your thought. And what it turns out to be is, like, they're a lot better than I am at a lot of things. And so when you give those people the tools they need and the everything, then the business actually does a lot better when you're not running it.
Absolutely.
So I'd say that's, that big journey of empowering other people has probably been one of the biggest things on our practice and our growth and our success.
Come to find out, other people have successful ideas too, and not just us when we don't micromanage. Who knew?
Of course. Yeah. Like I said, at first I really thought, okay, I'll let them do it, but they won't do it like I want them to. And they don't do it like you want them to, but they'll do it better than you. They'll do it better. Right. So,
and that's one of the PDA tenets, right? Expect the unexpected. This feels so cool because this is what it feels like sitting around a fire pit at PDA, right? And the three of us.
Yeah.
Dude, how did you get there? How did that happen? I mean, I love you, Chad. Your team story is so great, and I love Wade. How you're kind of giving us insight into these. I'm giving you gold stars left and right today on your leadership capacity, but expect the unexpected. Like, know that the first time somebody on your team does something, it's going to be wrong. And then the next time they do it, it'll be a little better, and then a little better and a little better. That's part of the learning, and having, building a system around that. So don't put a new person in with your highest risk, terrible patient, right? Give them a softball, give them a beach ball to hit first, and then a softball, and then the hard ball, right? Like, make it as easy as you can in that training process, because you've got to have room for mistakes to happen, because that's where the learning happens.
Yeah, because I definitely don't want to make it sound like it's all rainbows. You hand it over to the team and it just goes smooth, because it doesn't. But you just have to realize, just because it didn't work doesn't mean it won't. And like you said, we try to put those training sessions into that time where it's not with the patients the first time. The first time you go over a treatment plan shouldn't be on a $40,000 case. The first time you do it, sitting down with your office manager, whoever's doing the training, and you practice there. And then you start with, okay, we got a low risk patient coming in, needs a couple cavities. Let's let you try this. And you just build your way up.
Yeah. So tell us, is there a tough moment in your practice where your leadership was really tested? Is there anything there that you would share? Because you really are such a shining example of leadership. What could you tell us about the tough times? Because, again, you went through 2010, 11, 12, the Great Depression, recession, which people now don't even remember, right? People entering the workforce were kids during that time. They don't know. So can you share anything about tough times?
Yeah, I mean, you always have those months and things just aren't clicking. Obviously, the toughest time, and we couldn't have made it through without our amazing team, but we actually had one of our team members commit suicide a couple years ago. And so, it comes down to something like that, and you've got to talk to the team that morning. There is no preparation. I'm sure we messed it up. But at that time, you just have to lean on each other and take care of each other. It's not even about the patients at that point. It's just about your team. And we're still not over that. But you just kind of go through it. But if your systems aren't in place, a whole business could collapse. And if a business, like I said, it's not about the business, but these are people's jobs and families and lives that depend on it. So you got to keep your head up and lean on each other and depend on each other. So, like I said, it's not all growth and rainbows and fun. It's family and just being there for each other.
I appreciate you sharing that. I know that's part of your signature talk that you do, and you do mentor so many doctors through Coy Center. You're doing some speaking for PDA now, and you're just so real and authentic and putting it out there. These are real scenarios, and this is how we got through it. So I really appreciate you being such a great mentor for others.
Well, everything I do, I do love helping people, and I love seeing them grow, but none of these ideas are mine. It's just, I take stuff I learned from Vicky and Bruce and John and Angela and Chris, and it's just sharing that, so it's fun. It's fun to see.
You know what, Wade? It just came as an epiphany to me, is when you take an idea that's not yours and then you use it and you fail forward, as Vicky said, and you get better because of using that philosophy or that mindset or that tool in your bag. Then eventually, after you've mastered that, or as you're failing forward to get better at it, it is your idea. You didn't necessarily, it's not your original idea, but it is your idea. So you, with conviction, you can tell someone, no, I've used this, or I've used the not this, and it didn't work well. And eventually you can tell them with conviction, no, I've tried this and it does work.
Oh, I mean, totally. And it's your personal experience, and that's what we're trying to share. I'm never one to, I'm not wanting the credit for coming up with these things. I just want to help people.
Right.
And I want to make sure they understand that, hey, this stuff comes from a lot smarter people than me. I just want to help you get better.
Yeah.
We're also going to say that either Einstein or Plato or Socrates, one of those great minds, once said, there is nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Education is simply the process of remembering. And so
I think Vicki came up with that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But it really, I think that's the core philosophy of PDA is we're really not teaching anything that's new. It's just giving you permission to figure out what common sense is in your life and your practice, and then moving more towards that, because everybody does find their strength, and it's a little different in everybody's practices, but they find their strength and then they just run towards it, with gusto. I think that's the secret.
All right, Wade. So as we close out, we have a question for everyone, and I already know what your answer is going to be because
oh no,
you're in, but just
that's a big assumption.
Yeah. So don't give up your man card by answering the wrong way. Okay, here we go.
Stop it.
Okay, that was mean, and I apologize to all the audience and everyone for mankind and everything. Okay, so here's your question: bacon or eggs?
Oh, bacon.
Boom! Told you. I knew it.
I'm cooking ribs tomorrow, so of course we're gonna stick with the pig.
And this afternoon, what are you going to be going to?
I'm gonna go watch the Arkansas Razorbacks play a baseball game. So for the hopefully end up in the College World Series real soon.
Wow, that's awesome. I hope you have a really good time. That's beauty of dentistry, is being able to balance life out.
That's right.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening today. And Dr. Wade, thanks for joining us. Vicki, it's been good talking and chewing the fat.
Oh, you're so funny.
And, until next time.
Bring your lunch or take us to the gym again next week to improve your everyday practices. Also, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list. Now get out there and win with everyday practices.